Alright, so you've made it through 4 chapters of okay. And now we're getting into some of the fun stuff. Chapter 5, Forms of Condensation and Precipitation. So first of all, before we can talk about precipitation, we have to talk about condensation. And one of the forms of condensation is a cloud. And what's a cloud? A visible aggregate of water droplets, or, depending on its height and where it is, ice droplets, right? So basically just a collection of water and or ice droplets. Now, we already went over this picture in the previous chapter, but again, just to remind you, you have the air lifting. And what happens when it lifts? It expands, it cools, and then it starts to condense. So where does it start to condense? At the lifting condensation level. Right? And then once it hits that level, then it can just condense all the way up. One of the things people are told, I don't know if it's in middle school, elementary school, or just led to believe it without really fact-checking. Anyway, one of the things is that if you have 100% humidity, it must rain. That's not really true. The air can be super saturated, but there must be something for it to condense onto. Okay? If you have all of this water in the air, but there's nothing for it to condense onto, then it'll just stay there. It has to be able to condense onto something. And so you have something called a condensation nuclei. And the condensation nuclei acts as a surface to which the water can condense onto it. So, you see a lot of these. So in the morning you'll see dew on the grass, right? That acts as a condensation nuclei. Bread is fun, right? Because that's actually what makes your bread go stale. It's acting as a condensation nuclei, and so it's letting all that water come in, and it actually makes it, well, it ruins your bread. In Colorado, where it's dry, right, I had mentioned that, you hit 30% humidity and everyone freaks out and starts walking like penguins. But you go there, and when I lived there, I could have, and this sounds disgusting, but I could have the same loaf of bread for a month. It wouldn't go stale. I could leave it out and open. It wasn't going stale because there's no water to help that process along. Now, one here that we have in abundance in the air is sea salt. We have a lot of sea salt in the air, and so that acts as a condensation nuclei for water. What happens? Well, you get the condensation nuclei, and you can see that in the picture. There's these little tiny black dots, right? Really, really small, 2 micrometers in diameter, really, really small. But that's all you need to be able to attract the water droplets. So they attract the water droplets, and there's your condensation nuclei. Once one water droplet comes, it's like a party. They alert all their friends, hey, there's a condensation nuclei over here, and they all just swarm to that one condensation nuclei. Eventually they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and we'll talk about that as it falls through the cloud. But at first, it's like, hey, one droplet comes, and then poof, they all just swarm to that one condensation nuclei. And then it starts to, so it grows really, really fast, and then it starts to slow down. What's really fun, though, is one raindrop. One raindrop is 1 million water droplets. Okay? So next time you're out in the Florida weather, which of course we're all going to be caught at some point, in the Florida rain, and just drenched, right? Just drenched. Well, just think, one droplet is 1 million water droplets. So how many water droplets have you been drenched with? Huge number.